Good evening, everyone. I think y'all got a little peek behind the curtain a minute ago. Yeah, my sometimes when I'm moving the cursor, it randomly grabs hold of the image I've got in this program and moves it out of the way or shrinks it. So anyway, yes, I am still green screening, but good to have everybody here. Looking forward to continuing this class we've got going now on relationships. The name of this class series is Link. The subheading is an encouragement to everyone to work on strengthening your relationships. Now, on the one hand, sometimes that's been especially hard because of our lack of ability to be in person with people. I know wearing masks is less than desirable for all of us, and it's hard to read facial expressions when you've only got the eyes to work with. Just the same, on the other flip side of that, sometimes our relationships have been strained through this period just because we get so much time in some of the same spaces with the same people. As much as you love your family or the people you share living quarters with, it can be pretty challenging to be around everybody as much as we've been kind of cooped up together around each other. So anyway, it's I think a relevant topic to think about relationships, and to the extent that you're having to social distance, hopefully as we start to turn the corner on the effects of COVID, maybe you'll have some good tools for how to re-engage once you're finally able to start interacting more with people. So looking forward to all these classes. We've got a good topic tonight, going to be talking more about communication especially. Also want to remind everybody on the screen, you see that link rmd.at/KC midweek. I attempted on my phone here a minute ago to type that out and post that as a comment. So you'll see a comment from the church. That's me typing. But if you're not currently getting the text messages, I think I forgot last week, but I try to send a text out every week just to remind people, hey, it's Wednesday night, class is going to start here in about 30 minutes, that kind of thing. So if you're like me, I have a really hard time staying on a schedule when I'm at my house. I've got 2 or 3 different alarms that start going off when it's close for class to begin. So if you want to get a text message reminder from me, if that would help you, I would love to have you go to that link and sign up, and we will be sure to send those your way as you go. Lots of people commenting. Man, we already got 29 people viewing tonight from our various channels. So cool. Appreciate everybody's support. I know relationships are a relevant topic for all of us. So let's get going in this. Foundations of good communication. Communication is kind of at the bedrock of everything, isn't it? Our ability to talk to people, our ability to be heard, to be understood, but also to hear and to understand. Ideally, that is a reciprocal thing. We want to be known. We want to know. So there's a lot to communicating that really does help us to connect with people. Oh, there you go. So thank you for the nice plug for the text messages, Kathy. I forgot it was Wednesday until I got the reminder. So yeah, those reminders, they help. They do help. And sorry, I have got, I thought I had disabled messages. So occasionally, this is one of those times if you send Mark a text message, I hope you're nice because it may show up on the screen. My computer's linked to my phone. After we're done, I will try to remember to go in and disable those settings again. But I upgraded my operating system a few days ago, and I've been getting the text messages back on the screen again. So be very thoughtful about what you text me right now. Actually, what that text was about, I sent a survey out earlier today, attempted to send an email to everyone in our database who's listed as a church member. So if you're a member, hopefully you got a survey from me. It's relative to the Bible classes, life groups we're getting ready to launch in February. We're trying to make sure we got our plans in order, logistically speaking, and also just like hearing ideas from you. And I've just been thrilled. I think so far 30 people. I mean, it didn't take any time at all. I think 30 people filled it out. A good wide age range. And man, you guys have been really nice. As much stress as we've all been under, I'm always kind of expecting a few people are going to take a few shots at the preacher or the elders or whatever because they can kind of get away with it, with a survey. But everybody's been super nice. So I appreciate that. It says good things about you. And we appreciate the encouragement, the ideas, and also the information. So we know how to plan. We want to make sure we have adequate things in place for everyone. moving along here, Foundations of Good Communication. I just picked this book up a few days ago, and I'm looking forward to working through it. I will say this book by R.D. Laing, Knots, came out, published in 1970, I believe. 1970. This guy is a fairly popular psychiatrist. What's neat about him is, in addition to having like a strongly academic field that he worked in, like with mental health, he also enjoys poetry and wordsmithing. And so this book is a collection of like, I don't even know what to call them. Like, I guess you could call them like, they're kind of poems. Sometimes they have like crazy diagrams where he's put these things together. But what he's tried to do is to describe, like, some of these are nuts. I don't even know how to read this one, but some of these are really crazy. But he's trying to describe what he sees as dysfunctions within persons and especially within family systems, and to put them in a form of this circular kind of mind-bending knot, as he would call it. I'm going to share a few of them with you, and I'll say this book is one of the most, so far, like it's deeply interesting, but also deeply uncomfortable, right? So we're looking at kind of neurotic behaviors, but I want you to think about the value of good communication and really understanding and being understood as we look through some of these. So here's the first one in the book. I thought this was good. He says, they are playing a game. They are playing at not playing a game. If I show them I see they are, I shall break the rules and they will punish me. I must play the game of not seeing I see the game. I don't want to mention specific examples to wake up the internet trolls out there, but man, I feel like there's a lot of our culture that feels that way right now. Like, there are certain things you're supposed to say or not say, words you're allowed to use or not use, and goes far beyond things like expletives or offensive, racist titles. Like, it's all kinds of stuff now, and there's a big part of me that struggles with this feeling of, like, we're all having to play a mandatory game, right? Weird Al Yankovic, one of my favorite album titles of his was Mandatory Fun. Like, if it's mandatory, then it's not fun, right? Something about being locked into a game where I feel like a lot of people would like to say, this doesn't make any sense and I don't really think this is real, but I know I can't say it because if I say it, I get punished. Well, that's what's showing up here. That can happen. I think we're seeing it at kind of a societal level, but this is also something that happens within families. We got something, everyone doesn't want to talk about it. You don't talk about it. We all know it's there, but we all pretend like we don't know it's there. That's a big gap in communication. Here's one that I liked, and I didn't render this as well as he had it in the book, but he's got kind of a loop. So you see, this is a circular one. It says, you say, I don't want you to know about me. The people in your home say, why? I shouldn't have to tell you. Well, if you don't tell me, I can't give you what you want. How do you know what I want? I don't, unless you tell me more about you. Go back to the beginning, but I don't want you to know about me. Why? Well, I shouldn't have to tell you. So you see where this is going, right? Not being understood, but also not giving people the tools to understand you. That's a big problem with a lack of communicating. Yeah, Joe, I'm catching your reference there, and I'm tracking with you to a extent. Probably depends on the issue, but there's some of that going on for sure. I'm going to share a couple more, but as we go, I'm just kind of curious. In your own life, relationships, have you discovered any knots of your own that you had to work through where you recognized, oh, I was getting really irritated with a person over something and they weren't really understanding what I was needing? Or maybe it was vice versa. I had no idea what I was doing was irritating them so badly, but for whatever reason, we felt like we couldn't talk about it, and so we persisted. Did you have any knots? Have you seen any knots like that you would share? So I would invite you to share your own. I'm going to give you a couple more of this, guys, just because these are so creative, and I can't imagine the trouble of writing this. That's good, Brenda. The old who's on third sketch. Yeah, that's kind of real life these days, isn't it? Here's a good one with Jack and Jill. Jill says, I'm upset, you are upset. Jack says, I'm not upset. Jill says, I'm upset that you're not upset, that I'm upset, you're upset. Jack says, I'm upset that you're upset, that I'm not upset, that you're upset, that I'm upset, when I'm not. Can you wrap your head around that one? Yeah, I have no idea what it must have done to him to sit and try and compose these, but you see the way this goes, right? Like there isn't a problem, but somehow my thinking makes it a problem, and my inability to hear or listen perpetuates it. Yeah, there's a good one, and I think I got one more here. This was my favorite. You are a pain in the neck. To stop you giving me a pain in the neck, I protect my neck by tightening my neck muscles, which gives me the pain in the neck you are. How about that? I've got a behavior I'm persisting in, and I'm kind of creating my own reality, but I'm still going to blame it on you. So I'm reacting to something you're not doing, but because I'm reacting to you, I'm still going to blame you for my problem. So again, these are all really maddening, right? These circular knots, but again and again, it illustrates the problem of where there isn't a good communication coming through, where people aren't authentically, openly trying to connect. Not that you can ever be fully known, right? Like you can never fully know another person or anticipate everything they're going to do. But the deeper we're connected, the better we know each other, the easier it is to, like, I can at least understand where you're coming from, right? I don't have to love everything you do. I don't have to agree with you on everything. But if I understand why something matters to you or what I can do that's helpful, and you do the same for me, we can find a way to make this work. So those are a few examples, and this probably won't be the last time you see me bring up Artie Lang. These are just too interesting not to reference them on occasion. So recent discovery of mine, you will probably hear from Mr. Lang again. I wanted to share a few passages of Scripture, especially here at the beginning of class. And I thought I wanted to tip my hat to Kevin's class right now on Sunday afternoons at 4 p.m. Kevin is teaching on Zoom. He loves having people jump on Zoom with him so you can talk face to face, no masks, right? Because it's all digital. But as you go, you can also, like Sunday, it just wasn't going to work for us to try and get on the video feed, but we watched the class on Facebook. So just the way that my class is live now on Facebook and YouTube, Kevin is teaching now a class on Proverbs, got off to a good start on Sunday, and you can watch that on Facebook or YouTube, or jump on the Zoom call with him and learn a little more about Proverbs. But I'm gonna toss you a few Proverbs as we get started here that I think are good on. Boy, this is insightful, Kathy. I'm not sure we ever fully know even ourselves. The thought that God knows you better than you know yourself. That certainly I've come to appreciate more in having a child, right? Like it's not the case that I'll ever fully comprehend everything that he thinks or does or why. Like, and he has to kind of let me into his world, especially as he gets older and has more complex thoughts about things. But man, we study that kid's every movement, every facial expression. We're often, I think, much more aware of whatever he's thinking or doing than he might have self-awareness. So that's right. Can we ever really know ourselves? It's an interesting thing to think about. All right, well, let's look at some Proverbs, and I'm going to show you a few other passages. This is all stuff I think that is good pertaining to relationships and communication. Proverbs 12:18, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. I've thought for a long time that if there was any way, like someone were to ask you, how would you define wisdom? I have tended over the years to want to define wisdom as like knowing the right thing to say or do and when to say or to do it. Just like Ecclesiastes says, there's a time for everything. Like there's a time to challenge people. There's a time to comfort people. I wish I was wise enough to always know the right thing to say. I'd like to think over the years I've grown in that area because I have thought a lot about it. But the wisdom of what to say, how to say it, the tongue of the wise can be a source of healing for people, whereas someone who's reckless, you just never know how you're going to cut people with your words. I know I've had to apologize on more than one occasion for something that I totally wasn't intending to offend anyone with or direct at anyone. Sometimes this is an interesting thing about preaching. Every once in a while, I'll have someone come up and say, man, you did such a good job of saying such and such and such and such. And I'm thinking to myself, that wasn't the point I was trying to make at all. That's what you got, but that wasn't what I was trying to say. So we got to be really careful with our words because words have consequences, don't they? And we can either the consequences can be good, right? We can heal people, or we can cut people with the things that we say. Proverbs 18:2, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. We've all known that person that just loves to hear themselves talk, who really doesn't have much to say that anyone wants to hear. And I think there's something related to those two ends, right? Like the more you talk, the less people sometimes want to hear you talk. I try to be mindful of that when I think about, finishing lessons in a timely fashion. Nobody minds a good sermon that goes a little long. Nobody wants to hear me talk for an hour and a half on any topic if you showed up expecting 25 minutes. Got to be careful about airing too many of your own opinions. Proverbs 18:13, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Certainly true in relationships, isn't it? It's one thing to be in a heated discussion, but still trying to hear each other. Like, I feel tense right now, but help me understand this, and I want to hear you. It's another thing to be engaged in such a way that I'm not even listening to what you're saying because I'm working on my counterpunch, right? Like, I'm not going to hit you, but I'm going to say something harsh to you, or I'm going to try and expose the weakness in your thinking, or whatever it is you're saying, and all I'm listening for is just enough to make a counterattack, but I'm not really trying to hear you. Hearing and actually listening are not always the same thing. But I think that's a wise one there. Francis Schaeffer calls it back behind our eyes where we live. That's good, Joe. And we do live there. Not always easy to be known there. Proverbs 10:19, sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. Y'all ever gotten in a situation where you realized you were digging a hole and you felt like you just couldn't stop your mouth from talking, but the more you talk, the deeper you dig? That happens, right? Sin is not ended by multiplying words. Where there's a problem, listening is often a better response than increasing our amount of talking. Sometimes we need to hear more to understand, and if I'm talking more aggressively, I'm probably listening less. Another proverb, anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. There were 2 or 3 proverbs similar to this one I thought about pulling from. I thought this one was sufficient. But when you have anxiety, it's easy to get discouraged. But it's amazing how just a few words from the right person can really get you in a better path, help you feel better about things, help you reframe what you're going through. Very helpful. So here's some other passages from a few other places. Here's James chapter 1. This is one we all know. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen. So you listen quickly, but slow to speak and slow to become angry. We want to get the right modifiers with the right words there, right? Be anxious to listen. Hear people out enthusiastically, willingly. Be really careful before you respond. Be really careful before you let your temper start to flare. And by the way, I have been an advocate of this for years. I personally don't think that losing your temper is even a real thing. I think at some point we may act in unrestrained and crazy ways, but I do think we're always in control of our actions. And my counter example is, no matter how angry I felt, if someone pointed a gun at my head and said, sit there calmly and don't you move a muscle and smile at me, like, I would find a way to do it, right? Like if I were under threat. So this business about, I can't help it, I just lose my temper. No, you don't. You're just acting spoiled, and you're not putting the efforts into learning to restrain yourself. And I don't pretend that's easy. I don't pretend that some situations aren't super frustrating. I don't always have an easy time with that. Certainly not under the quarantine stuff. I've really struggled a lot with being a little edgier, a little less patient, but just the same, we all still have to own our own actions and what we do. So we should finding our temper more accurate. Very good. Thank you, Brenda. I like that. Let's be careful about finding our temper. But we have choice. We do have a choice in the matter. Another passage. I think I just got 1 or 2 more. 4:29 from Ephesians. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. This is for me, foundational concept in how I've tried to organize short-term mission trips. If we're going to go to all the trouble and expense of bringing a bunch of people to a foreign country to help a small group of Christians there, I really need to pay attention to what do those Christians down there actually need from us? What do they think would be helpful? Not what do I want to do when I go, but what do they actually want us to do when we come? And I want it to be according to their needs, to quote Ephesians. If whatever I do, I want it to be according to their needs so that whatever we've done will genuinely benefit those who've received our actions. But this is certainly true of words. By really listening well, by trying to be wholesome and uplifting, I can be wise. I talked about wisdom, kind of knowing the right word to say and when to say it. By listening well, it's like kind of really pausing to aim, right? Like you're really trying to look at what your target is. By listening well, we have a better chance of hitting it. Then Ephesians 4:15, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. Certainly there are some things going on here that are a bit more of an evangelistic type direction. So this isn't a passage that's purely about like relationships, but something about speaking the truth in love that's very important. I have a friend who was studying he was working on a master's degree in counseling, and he gave me this quote. I don't know where it comes from, but he said, love without truth is hypocrisy. Meaning, if I say I love you, but I'm not honest with you, then I don't really love you. And when I say I love you, I'm just being a hypocrite. So then on the flip side of that, truth without love is kind of a form of aggression, isn't it? Like, I'm willing to give you the truth, but I won't love you. You know, the people who kind of say, well, I don't care how people respond. I told them what they ought to think. If they got a problem with reality, and that's all, like, no, you can actually be really loving and gentle as you tell someone something that's hard to hear. And as I'm trying to reach people on behalf of the truth, which I think that's what we're doing for Christ, I should care enough that I'm willing to slow down and try to say things in a way that I will be heard, that I'll be understood, but also that you'll be able to receive, or at least feel a real connection. Like, I care about you, even as I'm telling you this thing you don't want to hear. So speaking the truth in love, not an easy balance, but an important balance that is worthy of our best efforts, I believe. In communicating, all right, so now let's get on to some other stuff. In communicating, I'm going to look at a couple of different things. First, I want us to talk about the warm-up, right? So here's some stuff that kind of is at the basis of everything else. And I'm going to give us, I believe it's 6 principles that will help your discussions go better. But for the warm-up, here's some stuff that, who is that voice? I'm sorry, Joe, and I may be seeing your comments a minute after you post them. I do not know. If you want to clarify what you're referring to, I'm not positive what you're referring to there. So I want to talk about a few matters pertaining to the warm-up. Like, what is the stuff we just need to kind of keep front and center most of the time that helps all these other things when we need to deal with the nitty-gritty stuff. One is warmth, true acceptance. One person defined it this way: overlooking a blemish for the sake of the beauty behind it. Genuine warmth, that I'm going to be kind to you. And let's face it, all of our real good relationships in life, don't you know the person you're close to has some flaws? Maybe even some flaws that drive you nuts, but you can still love them anyway because you know how many other good things there are about them. So being willing to overlook the blemish, because behind that blemish, there's so many other things that are worth engaging with, worth being around. So true acceptance, meaning I know who you are. I have a pretty good idea of who you actually are, warts and all, and I still like you in spite of those, maybe sometimes even because of those quirks and whatever you want to call them. But genuinely being warm, and certainly in our marriage relationships where you just want to try and treat each other warmly. And thinking about the warm up, starting off gently, right? It's not good to just go in on the attack mode, but trying to always have a nice warm up and to remind us how we actually do care about each other. Being warm, being genuineness, authenticity is what you are, not just what you do. Some people like to emphasize more the level of actions. Well, as long as I did this thing really well, I don't care how you feel about me. As long as I performed the task the way you wanted it done, what do you care if I'm nice or not? But in relationships, it's not the case that you can just say, as long as a person does some good stuff, if they are cold and make you feel uncomfortable in some avoidable ways, it kind of all the above matter. So authenticity, it is a matter of what you do, but it's also kind of who you are and what you're like. What is your presence like with the people that you're trying to reach out to or working with? So these are things that are expressed in your tone, your nonverbal behavior, your eyes, and your posture. These are all things that are pretty significant. In fact, something that's been beneficial to me a couple of years ago, I bought a book by an FBI agent. I think it was called "What Everybody Is Saying," and he was an expert in things like lie detection, and like his specific applications were not the ones I necessarily needed. But what was helpful to me was learning a lot about how nonverbal communication works. And of course, when I'm communicating, I'm not really able to think that much about my nonverbals, but it's helped me a lot in getting better at reading people. And I'll give you this tip. This was helpful to me. He says that the most dishonest part of a person's body is actually their face. Because, if you're feeling one way, but you don't want people to know how you're feeling, you're pretty good at remembering, well, I should go ahead and smile and be polite, and you'll say the right thing and you'll try to keep the right face. But he says the further you get away from the face, the more honest a person is being. So, I'll give you two of my own tricks, right? One thing I pay close attention to, especially after church, sometimes people really do want to talk to you for a while, and sometimes they may need to kind of get moving and they don't have time. But if they're wanting to be polite to you, they may not make that apparent. So watch a person's feet, right? If you are talking to someone and they turn toward you and the feet kind of open up, that means they actually want to have that conversation. Sometimes I'll talk to a person and they'll be friendly, but I see that their feet are still pointing the direction they were going, or maybe they're pointing their feet while we're talking. If you see the feet point, it means they don't want to talk anymore. And that's a nonverbal giveaway. That's one that I found really helpful. Another is just in general. Now, this is different under COVID circumstances, but in general, like people come from different backgrounds on whether they're kind of touchy or non-touchy, or like how much personal space they want. And like to kind of gauge how comfortable with you a person is, sometimes what you can do is like when you meet them or approach them, like I'll do this especially if I'm like greeting a visitor or someone I don't really know. As I first greet them, I will sometimes move in a bit closer than what I would usually stand to a person just in conversation. So I'll kind of invade what I think might be their bubble, and then I will immediately pull back after I've greeted them further than I would normally be engaged, and they will usually readjust at that point. So either after you've pulled away, they might pull a little bit back in, or they might just keep that distance. And it's given me, I think it's a helpful way to kind of gauge like how much personal space does someone need, and then also, is this person feeling comfortable enough with me that I could have more of a real conversation, or are they keeping me at a little bigger distance? But those are two things that I frankly do pretty routinely, and it's been helpful to me to read that. But that's a little bit of a tangent. But just in general, most communication is nonverbal, and certainly in a relationship, especially with like spouses, you get really good at reading each other's nonverbals. And so being genuine with each other, not just saying something and telling someone, yeah, I really love your outfit, while you never looked up from your phone, like the nonverbal says exactly what you're really thinking, right? So that's something to be cautious about. And yeah, whatever that percentage is, Cheryl, that's the truth. Most of your communication is nonverbal. So now, even if you would defend yourself and say, yeah, but I say all kinds of nice stuff to my spouse. And it's like, yeah, but while you're saying the nice stuff, nothing about you indicates that you mean a bit of it. They're hearing the other part loud and clear. So part of being genuine is what you've done, what you say, but also like really all the extra pieces of how you do that. And nonverbal communication is huge. So what's the tone you're using? What are you doing with your eyes? What about your posture? Are you being open? Are you being closed off? I've got a lot of thoughts on stuff you can do with that nonverbal. I'll have to bat that around with y'all some other time. But yeah, useful stuff to think about and to study, I think. Empathy is another kind of foundational thing. A great question to ask someone you're trying to be close to, a spouse, a close friend. What's it like to be you right now? Like, hey, I haven't got to talk to you in a few weeks. So what's been going on in your world? What's it like to be you? Like, what's something that's easy for you? What's something that's challenging for you? But that's a great question. What is it like to be him or her right now? And you can think about that in your head, but you'll never know it as well from your head as you would if you just ask them, like, how's it going? What is it like to be you? And also, specifically, how is your perspective on this different than my perspective? And I, off the top of my head, am not coming up with great stories, but thinking of my own marriage, I'm like, there have been several times where it was like, once I understood her angle on something, I understood, even though, like, to me, this is a totally fine behavior or a fine path of action, but for her, she wasn't okay with it. And like, rather than just saying, oh, quit being that way, like, if you take the time to hear the other person out, believe it or not, most people do things that make sense to them. And I know we all like to think the world is crazy, but a lot of the things people do, if you had been in their environment, grown up in their environment, or around the people that they're around, people do things that make sense to them. And if you were to get to know them, you might not agree with them, but you would probably be able to see A leads to B leads to C, and that's how they reach this conclusion. So think about trying on someone else's shoes. How can I get to know them? So that's a great question for empathy. What's it like to be you right now? Tell me about that. I also want to just pause and mention we are, if you're kind of just joining in class a few minutes now, we've got several people on tonight. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. For the next several weeks, we're going to be talking more about relationships. And if you are benefiting from this content, if you like this content, I would invite you to like our page, maybe follow our YouTube page. But we're live both on Facebook and on YouTube. So whether you're watching it on a device or on a desktop, or you can pull it up on a smart TV or Apple TV, Roku, whatever. But we're live in all these formats and would appreciate your support and would love to have you tune in anytime. I wanted to reference that as we transition to this next section. Ron, this is a good question. He says, when did you grow a beard? So here's what's embarrassing about this. I feel like I've had facial hair since 2006. In fact, I've got several comments when I moved here from a few of our members who didn't like my facial hair. And I was like, well, my wife does, so why do I care what you think? I was not quite that rude, but what's been funny is I feel like I've had facial hair a long time. And this is like, Ron, you're like the third person who's like, oh, so now you've got a beard. I'm like, it just hasn't been this long, right? No, it's been kind of chilly the last few days. I normally trim it about every 2 weeks. And when I trim it really, really close, but it's still going. And I'm kind of, I don't know, it's been chilly. It's embarrassing to say that because it's really not that cold where I'm from, but it's, I've been here 6 years now, so I guess my blood's thinning out or whatever it is that makes us get cold so easy down here. Okay, got a comment from Linda. I use those two communication tools to look at their posture and adjust to what I see. It's really important, isn't it, Linda? But that for me has been a good thing because people a lot of times with their face will try to be, we want to be nice to people, we want to be polite, but if you want to know how they're really feeling, there's other things you can look at to know. And I think a lot of people know the trick about, if someone lies to you, pretty much immediately they'll look to their left and look away. But yeah, there's nonverbal stuff, man. It's super, super interesting. All right, so here we go. Here are, and I'm borrowing these, adapting these from, this week I'm drawing from this book, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. I'm on a green screen, so it's going to look kind of weird, but Les and Leslie Parrott do some really good stuff, and this book really draws from a lot of other good resources, but pulling from one of their chapters on these 6 things, and also on those foundational things tonight. So 6 rules for successful communication. Here we go. Number 1, make I statements, not you statements. This is also a way that you can have a gentler approach. If I have a real problem with something you're doing, if you can frame it talking about yourself and what it's like to be you, it'll go over more smoothly than if you start off with the word you. And one of the problems is when we use the word you, one of our great tendencies is to ascribe motives to people. So you always do this because you just think such and such. And you don't know what they think. I mean, you have maybe an educated guess, but you may be totally off. So one approach, I recommend this a lot when I do counseling with people, but someone gave me this thing and they kind of laid it out as an ABC approach. And letter A is, here's the action. Here's what's going on. Letter B is, here's how I feel when that happens. And letter C is, here is what I would like from you. So this is what's going on. This is how I feel about it. And could you please do such and such? So if you have a problem with someone in your life, you could say, hey, and this is not an accusatory thing. Hey, sometimes I've noticed that you're doing this in this way. I'm not trying to, thinking to the side here. I'm not telling you why you're doing it. I'm not explaining your motives to you. I'm just saying, here's a behavior that is occurring. When that happens, this is what I feel, right? So I saw you do that and I got really frustrated because, maybe it's a big elaborate reason, or maybe it's just a simple little naggy thing. But when this happens, this is how I feel. Could you please do such and such instead? And that's a nice step because it's productive rather than just, you're so annoying. It's, here's what's bothering me and here's how I think we might could fix it. Can we talk about changing something to make this work better for both of us? Start off with I statements. Talk about yourself and your perspective and have the humility to acknowledge you don't really have their perspective or know exactly why they do what they do. Reflective listening. You have probably heard of this before, and the way reflective listening works is that when someone is trying to talk to you in a manner similar to number one, you listen really well, right? We've talked about being quick to listen. You listen, and then you try to be like a mirror who says back to them what you think they're trying to say. So this is, again, another thing you do a lot in counseling situations. I don't think he would mind me mentioning that there's a guy named Gaston Burns, Charles's son, who we've had long ties to. But Gaston usually helps out at the camp every year. And there was a few years ago, and I don't think I need to give any details. I don't frankly remember the details, but there was like a hard situation he was helping with, involved in. It was weighing on him emotionally, and he just kind of wanted to have a talk. And so we kind of went and sat together, and he was just kind of talking to me, and I was using reflective listening, and he told me a few things, and I said, so what I hear you saying is this is what happened, and this is how you were feeling about it, and this is kind of what it's like to be you right now. And he has got like his PhD in psychology, right? So he's much more trained in this stuff than I am. But he said, Mark, I know exactly what you're doing right now, and I understand why you're doing it, and even knowing what I know, it's still a really satisfying experience. It feels good for someone to listen to you and to actually hear you, right? Just to be acknowledged as you are, and this is where I am, and someone cares enough to say, oh, okay, so you're telling me this, and this is how you feel about it. So when you're doing this, the other thing you want to do is, as I reflect this back to you, usually a person will just volunteer the information, but you could say, okay, this is what I think I hear you saying. Please help me understand if I'm off on this. And the goal being that I can describe to you what you're feeling in such a way that I can tell it to someone else and you would say, yeah, you got it. You get me. You understand. So reflective listening is a really good way to actually hear each other out, and you can take turns with it, but a very, very important thing for listening well. No, here you go. This is what I hear you saying. This is what I'm understanding you're feeling about it. If not, tell me more. Help me to understand. There's another tool for your toolbox. Number 3, understand and accept the differences between men and women. That's one of those things I'm not sure it's safe to say these days anymore. But yes, there are actual differences, not just anatomically, but truly in a lot of different ways in how men and women are, and how we process things, how we think about things, talk about things. And it's easy to say, like, it feels like we're from another planet sometimes, but the truth is there are some differences, and those differences can be really life-giving when you benefit from the other's perspective. But here's a couple of categories that show up often. Learning the difference between what you might call feelings talk and problem talk can be helpful. So the stereotypical example, in fact, I thought about bringing up a video. There's a great video you can watch on YouTube. It's about 3 minutes. I'll probably use it in a sermon at some point, but it's called like The Problem with the Nail. And there's a woman who's like, well, I don't want to say too much, but she's got a nail in her head, and they're having a conversation about this nail and what to do about it and what it all means. And it highlights the differences between feelings talk and problem talk. But often what kind of happens is a person will engage where what they're wanting to do is to receive some empathy. So here's how I'm feeling right now about this. But if the other person responds, instead of using feelings talk, using problems talk, it can feel very dissatisfying and actually be kind of a point of disconnect. So you might be saying, well, I have a hard time at work with this person. And what you're needing is you just want the other person to say, I'm sorry, I know that's hard, but keep at it. You're going to get through it. I have confidence in you. Like those are feelings words. But if they say, man, I'm having a hard time with this person at work, and what you say is, well, I already told you you should say this and do this. Why haven't you done it yet? Right? Like those are two different things. So sometimes we have conversations about fixing things. Sometimes we have conversations about how we're feeling. And it's often a good idea to ask the other person. So if you're not sure, like, okay, right now you're bringing up a problem. Are we having a conversation about how we're feeling about the problem, or is this a conversation about what we want to do about it? And it's okay to kind of decide which direction you're trying to go as you talk. But knowing the difference between feelings talk and problem talk is a useful thing to point out. And here's another one, number 4, apologize sincerely when necessary. You don't want insincere apologies. We've been talking about the problem with not being genuine with each other, right? So you want to be genuine. You don't want fake apologies. There's ways these can get used badly, right? Like sometimes you can be trying so hard to make peace that you'll apologize for something you aren't sorry for that you didn't actually do wrong, right? And that can kind of perpetuate a negative behavior, right? But there are other ways people can use apologies passive aggressively. Well, I'm sorry you get mad, but so when we apologize, we want to make sure it's a real thing. But whenever there's something that's been taken the wrong way, be willing to say, hey, I did this. I'm seeing how it's gone over, or seeing how you feel about it. I wish I would have done something else. So yeah, so here's the thing, Joe. It's not only it's not only wives who have a need for feelings talk, and it's not only husbands who have a need for fix it type conversations, right? So there are some stereotypes we have about who needs what, but the important thing is to clarify. But you're right. And I'll just say, this is another thing I draw, Joe, from like basic counseling skills, but it is the case that most people who go to talk to someone about a problem are capable of solving their own problem. It has been, it is really rare when I'm talking to someone about a hard situation in their life that I propose solutions for them, because they've either thought of my solution already or they've tried it already. So when you're talking to another person, the only true expert in the room on that other person is the person themselves. And so by reflective listening, by trying to hear them out, by giving them space, a lot of the time people will be able to solve their own problems just by talking about them and being able to kind of organize their thoughts or prioritize what matters to them most. The reflective listening stuff and just giving people a space to talk. And maybe you've had that experience where you went to talk to someone about something you just couldn't figure out, and while you were explaining the problem, you produced your own solution. Like that happens all the time. But wherever wrong has been done, being willing to apologize sincerely is a really important thing. All right, got some good comments coming in, and appreciate all those. Here's a good one. Quote from Will Ferrell, so you know it'll be wise. Before you get married, ask yourself, is this the person you want to watch stare at their phone the rest of your life? I loved that quote. That is kind of the modern shape of things, right? That leads us to the next principle. Is this the person I want to watch stare at their phone the rest of my life? No teching when you're connecting. When you are trying to have family time, intimate time, it is really important that you don't invite distractions into those moments. Smartphones have been a hard thing to get a hang of. Frankly, I'll say I think the 24-hour cable news cycles have also been, like, we're all focused now on the smartphones. I think it's a huge problem that we've got people who sit at their houses for 12 hours a day watching their favorite news network and just getting really anxious and riled up about things all the time. But especially when you're trying to connect with another human being, there have got to be some spaces where the phones don't go. And I am at the point now where, like a few years ago, again, we didn't know what smartphones were going to do to us till we started using them. But like, I used to sleep with my smartphone beside my bed. If I woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning, it was not even a conscious thought. I just grabbed it and got on Facebook and, clicking notifications and off you go. But I know we've gotten really intentional about I would prefer to actually leave my phone in another room entirely at night when I sleep, but I feel like safety security is probably good to have it in the room, but we keep our phones not anywhere near our nightstands or beds just so we can't immediately start checking social media or distracting ourselves with them. It's like if it's time to sleep, it's time to sleep, and I don't need to invite the distraction. But also, if you're trying to have any other meaningful connections with each other, and you've got a phone that keeps going off or text messages or whatever it is, I've really gotten to the point where I do that a lot. Like Tuesdays are my days off, and I just generally don't even keep my phone near me if I'm at home, and it'll be in the other room, because if it's near me, I'll go into productivity mode or start engaging people or whatever. And it's like, hey, if this is my day to pull back, you got to have some times where you're not doing tech stuff. And so yeah, that's one way to do it. Oh man, we got some good thoughts coming in. Sarah, I appreciate this. I enjoyed that Enneagram class we did with Faith Builders a lot. The Enneagram is like a personality assessment that's got a really good spiritual growth component. I think it's likely, Sarah, I will try to do some other Enneagram class at some point. It was just so easily the most popular class I ever taught. But it's been hugely helpful to me in understanding myself and also having more empathy for my spouse and who she is, how she thinks, what drives her, motivates her, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's good advice. This is good too. Joe, Aaron takes his girls wilderness camping where phones don't work. Sometimes that's what it might take. But when you're connecting with people, I've gotten to where increasingly, like if you're having lunch with someone or whatever, if they've got their phone on the table and it keeps going off and they keep glancing at it, you sure don't feel like they're completely engaged with you at this time, right? So learning to have spaces where the tech is not part of what's happening. That's important. No teching when you're connecting. Here's some interesting statistics. 34% of couples admit to answering their phones during intimate moments. So times that we're just really together and we're connecting and it's just the two of us. The phone goes off, take the phone. 20% of people would rather go shoeless for a week than take a break from their phones. That's interesting prospect. I would rather go shoeless than have to do without the phone. And I tell you, these days, like if you've ever left it and gone somewhere, yeah, it feels weird, doesn't it? And I've had the experience. People talk about like feeling like ghost notifications. Like I don't have my phone on me, but I thought I felt it vibrate. Weird, but yeah, you can get too connected to the devices. 65% of people do sleep next to their phones. Again, I am at the point, I very much advocate against sleeping with your phone on your nightstand. Not to mention, like, we don't even really know the effects yet of all these different signals, rays, waves, whatever it's putting out. I mean, I'm not trying to be put aluminum foil on my head or anything, but there's got to be, I don't know, something about that can't be great, right? All that stuff going off next to your mind all the time. So, all right. The last one is to communicate through touch. Important to touch people, especially when you care about them. And nice thing about this, item number 2 here, touching is a skill that most people don't have to learn. And what I mean by that is that maybe you're not been good about being touchy with people, but just generally, especially with the people you care about, you don't have to be that smart to figure out how to give like a gentle pat on the arm or a little scratch on the back. There's a lot of different ways we can communicate that I care about you. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, if you don't know how to use the Do Not Disturb feature, that's a great one to have on during certain time periods. And also, I'm a fan of doing the airplane mode thing sometimes if you just need not to be bothered. Yeah, but touching doesn't take a lot to learn how to do it. And if you're not great at saying what you think, but you want people to know you care about them, especially the people in your family, get better at patting them on the hand, patting them on the arm. Try and say with your hands that you care and you're interested and you're compassionate. You can do a lot of stuff through touch. Burkeen and Faulkner, who were based, I believe, out of ACU for many, many, many years, traveled around and did all these marriage workshops. I attended one that they did when I was a student at Harding. And I remember one of the things they talked about was the value of doing a 60-second hug. And I don't remember which of them was sharing this, but, rather than, it's easy just to say, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too important, I have too many places I need to be, I got too many things I need to respond to. Everybody's got a minute, like you do. If you wanted to spend a minute, you've got a minute. And what they advocate for is, hey, maybe you are super busy, but getting to work at, 7:55 as opposed to 7:56 isn't going to ruin your day. So stop and for one full minute, just kind of hold on to each other and stand there and rock or whatever it is, but really engage in touch. And I remember he's an advocate for especially skin on skin contact. Would say just make sure there's like you feel skin and skin, something about that connection is very special. Part of this, it's also interesting to note, like talking about your own household. Was your family high contact or low contact? Some families are really hands-on, kiss on the cheek, hug all the time. Some families are a lot more standoffish, and based on what you grew up with, probably determines a lot about how you think that ought to be. But that's a conversation worth having. What was it like for you? Were you guys high contact or low contact? And what kind of contact makes you feel cherished and loved? That's important. So those are our big 6 for now. I would say if you find any of this content useful, I would encourage you to go ahead and hopefully, especially if you're on Facebook, there is a share button where you could just share this class so that your friends would have access to it. And we would appreciate that. But at least give us a like or a comment, and like our Facebook fan page, and would encourage you to follow or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Since we've been doing the online worship services, especially during COVID, that number on YouTube has bumped up quite a bit. Still, just about 167, but we haven't really pushed it that hard. And I've been so pleased how many people have been tuning in, paying attention, and that's been a great thing. Right now, I can see we got 35 people or households who are viewing, so that's a great number who are tuning in with us. Again, if you are wanting to get text reminders of when these Wednesday night classes are going to happen, especially, you can always opt out of them if you just want to be here for this class and then you're not wanting to check in later. I don't take any offense to that, but rmd.at/KC midweek, one of the first comments in this video on Facebook, at least, if you scroll up, you can see where I posted that as a link if you want to click it, but would love to have you subscribe to get notifications if you would like to be reminded when we're going to go live. Danielle, I appreciate the affirmation, and glad you are here and hope you enjoyed it. Just in general, if you have questions, right now while we're doing relationship stuff, I've got some definite topics I plan to address, but maybe you've got one that you just really wish I would talk about, or some dilemma or something you just are really concerned about right now with people's relationships. And if you got a burning question or an idea, my goal, there's lots of other ways I could spend an hour on a Wednesday night, so I don't want to do this unless it actually helps you. So let me know what's helpful to you, and I will try to give you what's helpful. And so anyway, appreciate everybody's affirmation and kind words. It has been good to be here, and it looks like we're going to wrap up just a couple of minutes early, but always good to see the Degollados as well. I see you there, Frank. Let's close with a word of prayer. God, we thank you for all the ways that you have been good to us, and we are so grateful for the beautiful mystery that our relationships are, that it gives us, in some ways, Lord, a great challenge of being united and coming together, but also the great satisfaction of when that goes well, that it's wonderful to be able to connect with other human beings, to feel close to people, to have those that we share memories with, experiences with. And so we do pray, Lord, especially for our communication with each other, that you help us to be gentle with our words, be wise with the things that we say, but to especially be very anxious to listen, to hear, and to understand. Thank you, Lord, for the time that we've discussed these things tonight. Please bless us all. Be with our nation and all the pain and confusion going on, and especially, Lord, be with the whole world during this ongoing pandemic. We just pray that you will hasten the end of this thing. And thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayer. We offer it in Jesus' name. Amen. Y'all have a great rest of your week, and look forward to Sunday. This coming Sunday, I am going to be doing an interview with Buck Griffith and Kevin Burr, and we're talking especially about pathways, like how do we connect with people. Buck's going to be sharing some insights from his prison ministry, letting us know a few of the things they've been up to. Kevin has got some really big stuff coming down the pipe for life groups. I mentioned we've got a survey that we sent out today. If you would please fill that out. Let me know how things are going for you, what you're thinking about. Sharing all that information with Kevin, with the elders. This one, you don't have to give us a name. Like, it can be anonymous, but we are asking, like, if you give us your name and there's something we could follow up with you on, we would love to be able to do that if you had a certain question or concern or something. So, yeah, this is a survey that we sent out today. I've already got a great response, but would love to hear from more of you as we go. Yeah, thanks, Randall. He's saying my Fitbit tells me I need to get some steps, but it doesn't control me. No, really. Yeah. You just never quite know, right, Randall? Yeah, never quite possible to sort all that out. Thank you guys for all your thoughts and comments. It's been a great night, and we will hopefully, Lord willing, see a lot of you on Sunday, and maybe we'll see you here again next week.